So let's try and use the everything that we've been talking about and hearing and doing and see what we think. I'm going to share a photo and of a place that some of you may have been to, some of you may not have. It doesn't really matter. And Dorsey is going to give us a brief mindful visualization of the space that I'm going to share with you. And then we're going to kind of just call out and talk about what we notice and what we question. And so again, just as a reminder, we're going to be focusing on these first two parts of the design framework for talkSTEM, which is initially just noticing the space of the object, and then brainstorming questions without judgments. So this is the photo that I'd like to share with you. This is a structure that some of you may have seen, or some of you may not. It's in downtown Dallas. It's the Dallas Holocaust Museum. Dorsey, would you like to guide us through a brief visualization?
Yeah, for those of you on camera, how many of you have been to the Dallas Holocaust Museum before in person? Looks like one person. See? So probably some of us have been there, some of us haven't. So we'll do a guided visualization. This is something, as we do these visual experiences for talkSTEM, virtual, excuse me, you could show, you could look at a lot of different pictures of the space, or you could also close your eyes and visualize what the space might look like to start this process of noticing, since we can't be there in person. So I invite you to take a moment and gaze at the picture that Koshi's sharing here of the Dallas Holocaust Museum. So this is actually a mindfulness practice called art gazing. We can look and notice a picture or a work of art and notice what we see. So you might see here in the photo, tuning into the copper metal around the upper half of the building. This is copper, just like a penny that starts off as shiny and new and starts to change color over time as it weathers. The copper was chosen to represent the strength of those who've stood up to injustice. So tying in with the Holocaust Museum, this copper crown around the top. And also noticing here the darker brick towards the bottom. The bottom of the structure is perhaps slightly narrower than the top, and also how this building is set amidst the beautiful downtown Dallas backdrop. You might imagine how the building looks at night when it's lit up by lights. You might imagine the inside of the museum, which carries on this brick and copper theme with lots of natural light. And so as you look at this picture, already starting the process of noticing, what do you see? What do you observe at the Dallas Holocaust Museum space? And then starting to question what you might see there. And I'll let Koshi guide this part.
Thank you, Dorsey. I'd love for us to just do this together. Let's just do the notice and the question together. If there's anything else you notice that you'd like to share, please let us know. Or you can use the chat if you prefer. And then let's just brainstorm some questions that come to mind. And remember, again, we're not trying to force any connections, but what questions come to your mind as you look at this image, or if you've been to this place, you may have a memory of this structure as well. And I think I have some chat, so let me go look. Yep, someone's noticing the rounded edges on the bottom right. Thank you, Carol. The odd shape of the top, the angles of the tip of the roof and the skyscrapers above it, the copper reflecting the light, the windows in the bottom, windows of various forms of quadrilateral with faces. Questions, how much does the copper roof weigh? How does that weight compare to the weight of the bottom of the building? What is the top part of the structure made of? Thank you, everybody. And I know that you could keep going. So why are there different shapes of the window? So let me tell you, well, so we picked our question. I'm going to share at least the first part of our video. And if I don't, it's about two and a half minutes, I think, this video. We'll watch the first half. And if you're curious, definitely watch the rest. It's up on our YouTube channel. And we went exactly through this process. We spent a good amount of time, myself and two of my team members, noticing and questioning. And here's what we picked.
We're standing in front of the Dallas Holocaust Museum, which has recently expanded to continue its mission of combating prejudice and teaching tolerance as a way to honor the lives lost during the Holocaust.
As the museum has grown, so too has their reach. And the building behind us stands as a beacon of welcoming and acceptance to the over 86,000 visitors they receive every year.
I noticed that there's a really interesting building material used around the top half of the museum that creates a really unique shape. And I sort of wonder what that shape is. If we count, I noticed that there are about four quadrilaterals coming together to form a really unique composite shape that stands out amongst all of the other buildings here in the West End Historic District.
Another really interesting feature of the Dallas Holocaust Museum's new building is the copper metal that surrounds the upper half of the building. And did you know, actually, that that part of the building is designed to age?
I think I know about the phenomenon you're talking about. It's a process of oxidation. And if we come back in 10 to 15 years and look at this building again, it's going to look really different. Right now, it looks very shiny and new, kind of like a penny, a brand new penny. But over time, it may start to turn brown or even different shades of green, and it'll look really beautiful and be a really interesting effect.
You've seen this before. All you have to do is ask your mom or dad for some pennies, new and old, and I happen to have some here.
Oh, wow. So if you notice, this penny here is from 2013. So it's much newer and still very shiny, just like the copper on the Dallas Holocaust Museum. This penny here is from 1963, so it's over 50 years old. And if you notice, the process of oxidation has already started to take place. It's much brown, there are shades of brown, it's not nearly as shiny, and there's also some green occurring, or some green on the back of the penny.
That's called forming a patina. You've probably also seen a patina before on the Statue of Liberty, which was originally built with copper sheeting. And over time, this copper sheeting has come to form the patina that makes the beautiful green color as it's been exposed to the New York coastal air.
Thank you so much for watching.
We ended up watching most of that. Let's do another one. Over here, I have an image of a magnolia tree. Happen to love magnolia trees. And you've probably seen many of these, but Dorsey, do you want to just do a quick visualization, although this is something that might be more familiar to most people?
Yeah, I guess I would encourage, again, you all to look at this picture of the magnolia trees and give yourself a few moments to let your eyes roam over the picture, noticing, just like you did with the museum, what stands out, maybe noticing the shapes, the colors, the light in the photo. This is the noticing, the curious observations. And you could draw on this picture of a magnolia tree. Maybe you've seen some in your life that those pictures are coming to mind more strongly. So you might start to share your questions just as you did before. Is that okay, Koshi, for them to share their?
That would be great.
Yeah. What sort of questions might you have? It looks like we're already getting some good comments in the chat.
Yes. Yeah, so we have, someone's noticed, Carol, thank you, bud versus bloom. You see a difference there. The bud looks like a light bulb. And there's that tiny pod. So yeah, please do share your noticings and your questions. And, while you're doing that, let me say that sometimes it's really challenging to really be present and notice something that you're familiar with. I think for most of us as adults in particular, we tend to make assumptions. It's sort of the way that we manage lots of inputs and information. We, have shortcuts so we don't have to dwell on too many things and overutilize our senses, as Dorsey just guided us through. And I know that I'm frequently guilty of this. So it's creating your own walk STEM tour. Yes, it's STEM education, but it can really be invigorating to your mind if you allow yourself to immerse yourself in this process. At least that's been my experience. Some more questions. Consistency of shapes among leaves. Is there consistency? If they're not, what degree of consistency? The pod is more the shape of the leaves. Why is that? Some leaves are more brown than others. Does that have to do with age? And you go on. And as you do this with yourself and with colleagues and with children, I think you'll notice that, and this is where when I've worked with teachers, there's this tendency, we all have it as enthusiastic educators, to immediately kind of, and it's something that's hard to do, but whenever I work with teachers, I advise them as much as possible to do this, which is not to immediately point out the questions that are maybe not answerable, or maybe the question is not the kind of question you want for this particular exercise, all kinds of things. To let it be an authentic brainstorm, and then to go through the questions. And oftentimes the kids recognize this for themselves, like, oh, that's the kind of question you could just Google, so why would you do that here? Obviously, we don't need a vocab definition type of question. We really want a question that utilizes our senses, observation of different types. So that's the next step, which will come with just curating your questions and figuring out. A lot of that is highly subjective. You may have 3 or 4 really great questions. Which one grabs you more? Well, it's kind of like, making a movie, which is the best shot. It's subjective. So you pick the question that feels best for you, or if you're guiding your students and you do have specific topics, then you can certainly adapt this to addressing topics, and you can make it very authentic and say, okay, well, let's pick a question that connects to the unit that we were just talking about, because we want to go deeper in that unit. Whatever your learning goals are, definitely you're very free to include that in this process. So this was actually magnolia trees that we walked by in our very first Walk STEM tour in the Dallas Arts District. And we were actually it was kind of unplanned, and we included it as we were walking from one stop to another. So we have a quick 1-minute video about these trees. Here's what we picked.
As we're walking by the stand of magnolias, we don't really have time to stop right now, but do take a moment to look carefully at one of these beautiful glossy leaves of the magnolia tree. And what you will find is that there are certain shapes formed by the veins of the leaves, create sort of geometric shapes. And what you'll see is that same shape repeated over and over again, getting smaller and smaller as you head toward the edge of the leaf. And understanding that kind of repetition and the fact that you can have a pattern that repeats at smaller and smaller scale is something where mathematics has allowed us to understand the structure of living things around us, understand why they're formed that way, much more clearly. So it enhances our appreciation of the natural world around us as well.
So, so the goal behind this workshop for me was really to, and I'm so thankful for Dorsey's collaboration, to understand that anything we do with our students and with ourselves is, always has this backdrop of stress reduction, building kind of calm, creative, and healthy mindsets that also can do STEM. I mean, STEM is about innovation. STEM is about creativity. STEM is about observation and questioning, and having that healthy mindset is the best way to really lay that foundation. And in today's world, what's really exciting for me is that, in the field of brain and neuroscience, we're learning so much about meditation and mindfulness and how important it is for us all to have wellness and health in our lives. So there's that other connection with what Dorsey's practice is all about. I know that we live crazy lives, particularly now for many of us, as we stare at screens a good chunk of the day. But that's what I love about both talkSTEM and mindfulness practice. You don't need a lot of stuff. You need your mind, and whatever space you happen to be in is totally fine. And that's it, really.